I think the biggest myth within what I do and in my specific industry and niche is the idea that taking a break somehow sets you back, right? That it takes you off the path, that it reduces your success, that it could derail your career or it could set you back in your business. And that is absolutely wrong because we're humans, not machines. And we thrive, right, on being restored. We thrive on rest. We thrive on play. These are things that fill our cup. These are things that inspire us, that continue to create more innovation, more ideas. We bring our spark back to life when we stop to recover for a second. And we don't always need to be rushing, and doing to be productive and worthy. There's so much productivity that happens on the inside where it's not immediately visible, but it's incredibly impactful. And so I would say stopping to take a break, whether it's 2 days, a week, 3 months, right, can be immensely helpful to helping you zoom forward in your life to create the things that you want to create instead of derailing that success.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Expert. I'm your host, Devin Miller, a serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7 and 8 figure businesses, as well as a founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where we help startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Katrina McGhee. And Katrina, we're going to talk about a few different things about starting your business too broadly and how that might be affect your business and how you want to narrow your business down, taking a break from your business and sometimes taking a step back. If you are doing a service-based business, how you align what you enjoy with the audience and why that's important. And then also maybe talking a little bit about not having to have everything perfect, as well as taking a break without going broke. And so it should be a good conversation on a lot of great topics. And so with that much as introduction, welcome on the podcast, Katrina.
Thanks, Devin. I'm excited to be here. We got a lot to talk about today.
Absolutely. So, before we dive into the topics at hand, for those that haven't had a chance to catch your inventive journey episode, which is a sister podcast to this one, definitely encourage everybody to go check that one out. But for those that haven't had a chance or say, hey, I'd just like to hear just a little bit about you and then jump to the topic at hand, introduce yourself a bit to the audience and let them know a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Okay, great. I am a career break and sabbatical coach. So I help people mid-career quit their jobs to take breaks. So I am a big believer in taking time off, whether it's a short amount of time, an extended break, but I really truly believe in the power of breaks. And the reason I know that they are magical is because I was in a corporate career as an actuary, left that to get my MBA, realized after a second corporate career that life was not for me. And so I saved up 40K in 18 months and took off for a 20-month career break. And when I came back, I landed 5 job offers in 5 weeks, decided to go back to corporate to pay off my debt, and then launched my own business. So I have been coaching now for 5 years, and I counted it up last week. I have now supported over 50 career breaks and counting. So
Awesome. Well, that's definitely sounds like a great background and certainly have a great amount of experience on the topics at hand. So with that, now as we get or dive into the topic at hand, in no particular order, one of the things that I thought was interesting that we talked with a little bit beforehand was the idea of, sometimes when you're starting a business, you have the desire, oftentimes make the mistake of starting it too broad. Now, I get where that is. In other words, a lot of times when you're starting a business, you're just trying to keep your head above water, get some money in, get some, income going and get the business going. And so you're saying, hey, if this is a little bit outside of our comfort zone or our area, but it'll be helpful to get the business going, then let's do it. Or, if it'll provide that income, and yet it can sometimes be detrimental. So help us understand a little bit about why it can be detrimental to start too broad and how you find the right balance of not niching so much or so far down that you can only possibly have one client, and yet on the other hand not going so broad that nobody knows what you're actually providing. So give us a little bit of insight there.
yeah. So I think, and like you said, in the very beginning, you're really just trying to make it work. And I definitely think there's a time and place for market research, for having ideas and for testing and learning. And especially if you're a service-based business, for figuring out who do you really like working with and who gets the best results when they work with you. So you might not completely know that when you jump in. But I think a lot of times, once we start getting that feedback, we might secretly start to realize a niche is forming, or there might be like one or two niches sort of rising to the top for us. But it can feel like, oh, if I niche down, it's going to be too small. My audience is going to be too small. And I will not possibly be able to, like make this business work. And, I was guilty of that myself. When I started my services and coaching, I coached on unconventional career transitions. So some people were taking breaks, but some people were starting like a third career or a fourth career. Some people were becoming a freelancer or an entrepreneur. And so it was kind of everybody that just wanted to leave corporate. And I learned a lot and I got to practice a lot. And so I don't regret that at all, but it took me a lot longer than it should have to really realize I wanted to niche down to career breaks. And the crazy part of that is I told myself that is way too small of a niche. But what I found was when I got really clear and I started just talking about the breaks, I got a lot more interest and people really started to understand my expertise, what I stood for, and who I served. And there was still a ripple effect of other people reaching out and saying, I don't exactly need to take a break, but I was really in admiration of your story. And I know you help people make a leap. Can you help me make a leap into entrepreneurship or freelancing or something else? So it wasn't that like I got no one, but
Mm.
I had much more differentiation and uniqueness and a much more compelling like reason to buy when I was really speaking to the people I wanted to speak with. And so what I would say is, for me, it was a lot about alignment. So as you're starting to collect this information and you're starting to realize you like certain kinds of clients or you like certain kinds of topics or certain kinds of areas, but not others, really having the courage to own that and to grow, right? Because when you start to niche down, you give yourself permission to not be distracted by all the things you could or should know. And you really get to become an expert in the place where you shine and the place where you enjoy and the place where you create an impact. And I just wish that I had given myself permission to do that sooner.
No, definitely makes sense. And now I'll still push back a little bit, or I don't know, push back. That sounds like I don't agree, which I do. But if you're to say, okay, there you do run the risk if you niche down too far. I mean, you could niche down to the point where you can only possibly have one client or maybe even no clients. And while it may be the thing that you most enjoy, or that you're saying this is what I want to do, there is that balance of you have to find the niche where there is paying clients or there is customers that are actually willing to pay your service. So any thoughts on how you find that balance of how far you niche down to, so you don't or make the company doomed from the outset, while also not being so expansive that sometimes, as you mentioned, people, it becomes that your message is unclear as to what the service you provide. So how do you find that balance as to how far to niche down?
Yeah. So, for me, I would say I used to believe that there was a thing as too small a niche. I do think, to your point, that definitely is true. But there's another woman that does career break coaching specifically for Black women, and her business is bigger than mine. And that's an even smaller niche within niche within a niche. But what I think is true is if you can speak to a need state, right? So if the people in your niche have, if you're really focused on like the need state, sometimes it can overlap different demographics or different circumstances and kind of like reach multiple people, but it speaks very deeply to what they need. I think, like to your point, if on paper there's one person that qualifies, then that really doesn't make sense. But I would say, I don't really, for me, I don't really focus as much on demographics. Like I tend to know the average age range of my people, but it's so much about what they're looking for. So a lot of the people I work with are looking for a transformation in their break experience, right? So it's so much about the person that feels like I need this break to give me a new life. Like I need to come out of it different than I came into it. And so, really understanding that need and being able to speak to that need versus a bunch of demographics about like where they might live or exactly what their age is or what their background might be. So yeah, that's what I've found is really focusing on the need. The needs are, yeah, I feel like needs are truths. And so like for me, it's like if I can speak to that truth, I can reach multiple people with that truth. But yeah, I feel like to some extent it's just like don't pick one person, like just don't narrow it down to one person. But otherwise, I do feel like there's room to really like hone in and narrow down.
No, and I think that there's absolutely, and I think most of the time people are certainly stray towards making their niche way too broad or way too big, and it muddles the message. but I think you have to say you still do have to, and I like how you put it, you're solving a problem, you're solving an issue, and as long as you can say this is an issue that affects people and I can find those people, then it's a good place
Yeah.
to start. So I think that definitely makes sense. Now, shifting gears slightly, but it kind of goes along with that, which is, you found your niche, or, I don't know if it's niche or niche. I always hear both
Yeah.
ways, but I always say niche, and then I always hear people say niche, but I'll go with niche. So you find your niche and you're saying, okay, that's really, or talking or working with people as to how to take career breaks, which I definitely get, go through burnout phases. You have things where you're trying to, or you're trying to take a break, whether it's midlife crisis, or you're trying to say, hey, I want to make a career transition, but I want to step back and rather than jump into the next thing. But I think where you're concerned, and it's one I would have, is, how do you do that without going broke? And I would put it as two scenarios. The easier scenario is if you're single, you don't have a lot of obligations, you go broke, you can, a lot of people, especially in today's day and age, will go back, live with their parents, and you have very little financial obligations. Or two, even if you don't, you can go find a 1-bedroom apartment. To go unbroke isn't that hard. The harder one is if you have a family, right? So you have a wife, you have kids, you have other obligations, you have a house payment and other things. It can be hard to take that break. So pick whichever scenario, but I'm curious as, how do you kind of take that break, take a step back, which I think can certainly be beneficial without going broke?
Yeah. So, depending on your circumstance, right, is maybe where you would start. But I would say in both of those cases, you need to understand your cash flow before you really start planning for a break. And by that, I mean, how much money are you actually spending every month and on what? And how much money are you taking in? Because obviously, the amount of time that you can take on a break and what that will do to your finances, the impact is going to matter a lot on what your spending is. And if you haven't been paying attention, you could get on a break and you could spend way more money than you anticipated, right? You don't want to guess blindly how much money you're going to spend on a break. That doesn't, it's not going to bode well, right? So you want to anchor that in some pieces of information. So if you're going to stay at home or have a home base, keeping your house, it's like, how much am I paying to run this? How much am I paying for groceries? How much am I paying for car insurance, for health insurance? Understanding where all your money goes. If you have a family, obviously it's the same. It's just a bigger picture, right? It matters like what both people are producing, and what the household expenses are coming in and coming out. So once you know that, right, if you want travel involved in that, there are ways really easily on Google, right, to find out like cost of living, or you can just go to Airbnb or, like a rental place or hotels and like figure out if I was to stay here for a month, what might that cost, right? You
Mm.
can look up the average cost of food per day and just figure it out from there. You don't have to be exact, but you do want to get some type of grounded estimate for what your break could cost. And then once you know what your break is going to cost, right, you can save that amount of money or put that amount of money aside or decide that some of the money you have in savings you're going to allocate to this break, and you can leap and spend it. I have clients that have kids. I have clients that don't. I have clients that have partners. I have clients that don't. I think there's no circumstance where if you really want to take a break, that you can't find a way to creatively make some type of break happen. It might be shorter or less luxurious than you would, like imagine in your fantasy, but it doesn't mean that it's not possible. I think there's always a reason not to. So for the single people, I've had single clients that have said, there's no one to fall back on. If I can't find a job when I come back from my break, what am I going to do? Who's going to be there to like help me? Like, what if it takes me a while? Like, I don't have a second income to depend on. And then I have clients who have partners that say, oh, I have a second person depending on me. I can't take my half of the income out of the equation. Like, so there's always a way to get stuck on the like, I can't. But truly, if you know how much you're spending and you know how much you can save each month, you can start to do the math to figure out how much do I need to save to make this break happen, and then stick to a budget of sorts when you're on your break.
So no, and I think that certainly makes sense. And a couple of questions on that. So let's say, because when you get into that, do you let what break I want to have or what break I need to have, control, and then I figure out what the budget is for that and I save up for it? Or do I, if I'm burned out and I'm saying, no, I just want to take a break and I don't care what the break is, I just want to, or I want to have some time off, or I want to have a breather time? Do you say, what am I able to afford, and then fit your break around there, kind of, which one is the more controlling? Because I could say, hey, I would love to take 6 months off, just go and have a wake up whatever time I want to do, go and exercise and run and maybe travel a little bit. And why that'd be fun, I don't know if my budget allows it, and vice versa. I may say, well, if all my budget allows is for a 1 week off and that's that I have to get back at it because I or so tight or so in debt or whatever or whatnot, then it's like, okay, does that really break? So how do you balance kind of those
Yeah.
drivers?
Yeah. So I have 5 questions I ask every client at the very first session, which is really helping us uncover what is the purpose for this break and what are your 4 themes, which are the things that you need this break to give you to be successful. Right. So once you've uncovered that, you know the essentials, right? You know what absolutely has to happen, even if it's on a higher level, right? So one of your themes might be recovery. It might literally be I'm burned out, I need to recover. Another one might be I need inspiration. Like I need to walk away from this experience feeling inspired by life again, right? Whatever your themes are and your purpose is, when you know that, you know what success means. So I would say in that circumstance, I've had clients that have approached it both ways. And to your point, a lot of times, you'll hit that ripcord moment where it's like, oh my gosh, I've overstayed like in this job. Like I am so burned out. I can't take another day. In a ripcord moment, your finances are finite, right? Like the money you have is the money you have. So I still want you to get clear on what you need. But when you get what you need, right? When you think about what you need and you look at your finances, you have to get resourceful and creative and how you're going to make that happen. So if you need restoration as that one of your themes and you don't have as much money as you wish you had for that example that you gave of the 6 months, with time to like do all the things, it's like, okay, well, do I need to invest $10 in a meditation app and really start practicing meditation? Do I want to take some yoga classes at the Y? Do I want to start daily movement? Do I, it's like figuring out how to give yourself that creatively, resourcefully on a budget. Points and miles are great for travel, but like just figuring out what you have and retrofitting it to your budget. So that's like the ripcord. I can't take it. What I've got is what I've got. I do have clients that fall into that category. A lot of my other clients, though, have more time. They aren't in that extreme burnout or that extreme I'm done phase. They're just kind of over it, but like not completely to the edge. And so
Mm.
then we get clear on what they need. And you start to figure out, well, if I let myself dream, right? Is it 6 months? And if it's 6 months, is it 3 months of activity and wellness and rest and reading and meditation and joy? And then is it 3 months of shifting my career path and networking and classes and learning for the sake of learning and enjoyment, right? And then you can start to figure out what that might cost. There's still going to be some finessing where you have to like make it work with your budget. But in that circumstance, they have time to save once they've sort of figured out what they want that break to be and they can create an estimate for it, which is how I did it, right? So I estimated a 12-month break with a lot of travel and I thought it would be $38,000, including some buffer in case something went wrong. And so I
Mm.
worked for 18 months to save the 40K and then I traveled for 20 months because it lasted a lot longer than I thought it would.
No, that definitely makes sense. I think that's some great piece of advice. And I do like, there are different motivations for why you'd want to take a break, everything from extreme burnout to just, hey, I want to clear my head to I want to, re-engage or I want to make a career shift. And I think that identifying what that motivation is can oftentimes direct or what type of break and how long that's going to be. Now, one of the other ones that you hit on, which at least it would be for me, is I'd be worried, okay, let's say I'll make it up. I want to take I'm hitting extreme burnout. I need at least 3 months to clear my head, just unwind and before I re-engage on things. And so I go and take a 3 or 4 month or even longer break. And then I'm worried about getting back into the working world. And one, if you see your own business, it's going to be, you're going to worry that all your clients are going to wait, especially if you're the one driving it. How do you even re-engage that business once you, take a break from burnout? Or two, if you're taking a break from a career and you're working for someone else, most employers aren't going to give you 3 or 4 months off. So you're going to have to go and find a new job or new employment after you take a more extended break. How do you go about, addressing that issue of finding jobs once after you've taken a longer, more extended break?
Yeah. So on the corporate side, right, if you are an employee employed by someone or working for a company, the reentry period is what I have all of my clients that have corporate corporate lives do, which is basically setting aside time at the end of your break to figure out your next step. Because if you don't, you'll spend your whole break worrying about what's going to come once the break is over and kind of diminish the benefit. But two is that it gives you time to invest money and energy into really planting a crap load of seeds for that future career, right? So it looks like what it could look like is a lot of networking. It could look like attending a conference. It could look like reconnecting with people from your network from before. It could look like, searching LinkedIn just to see what's out there and to start getting your resume together and maybe hiring someone to help you boost that resume. But at the end of the day, that reentry period is absolutely how I landed 5 job offers in 5 weeks when I came back from my break. And this is the fundamental truth I believe about breaks. If you give yourself what you need, if you fulfill your purpose and you fulfill those themes, you come back as a better, stronger, more inspired, more excited, more motivated person, right? You come back as a higher version of yourself. That
Mm,
person finds jobs. That person comes with all the experience from the last career or the last, like, however many years of work experience, the same network, the same education, but way more motivation and way more rest, right? And so that person absolutely, like, just can tear it up, right? But you need that period of time to not freak out and to, like, really have a plan and move through the process. For entrepreneurs, it's a little bit different. And to your point, it's nearly impossible to completely walk away from your business for months on end. You might be able to shut it down for a few weeks, but I think if you don't have a team in place, it's kind of hard to completely disconnect. However, I have coached a few entrepreneurs who took breaks. So one person hired 3 people on her team to sort of step up and do her job because she wanted to take, like, a longer break. And so her plan was to completely disconnect for 2 months and then to slowly be, like, phasing back into the background in her reentry period, but not having to do all the day to day stuff. But the other thing is communicating with your clients, right? So if you've decided all you can take is 3 weeks, letting people know and get excited for you and tell them what you're doing. You can queue up content if you're somebody that shares content, so it's running and sort of dripping so people don't completely forget about you. But I think bringing people on the journey can be helpful to have people, like, not be completely startled when you reappear. However, to your point, it would be really hard to walk away for months and months and months and to come back. You would basically have to sort of restart your mojo on that.
mm. No, I think that makes sense. And maybe just one follow-up question to that, which is, so, it sounds like, but not putting words in your mouth, but putting words in your mouth, so when let's say I wanted to take a 3-month break, should I incorporate in there either towards the end of the break or during the break that I'm brushing up on my resume or I'm otherwise getting things in place? In other words, I'm not 100% taking a break, or I'm building into the back end of that break that I need to give myself a cushion to go find a job. So do you do that, or how do kind of
Yeah.
it sounds like maybe you build that in either a lot or as you go along or as you hit the end, so that you have that, or do you have that bandwidth? Is that right?
Yeah. So the reentry period comes at the end. And my rule of thumb is at least 1 for 6. So for every 6 weeks that you're going to be on a break, dedicating one of those to a reentry period. So if you took a 6-month break, just for math, right? 24 weeks. So you would have 4 of those weeks dedicated to reentry. So that would basically be like 5 months of a break, 1 month of reentry.
I got it.
Mhm.
And I guess that if you've had a good break and you're ready to re-enter, and you've otherwise have a good experience and career path behind you, that you feel that the 1 month period is typically enough time to be able to find that employment or that position. Is that a fair
Yeah,
or fair?
absolutely. Yes. So basically, what usually happens if somebody is taking a 6-month break is the first 3 months are complete disconnection. And then they start to sprinkle in heavy on the inspiration or the adventure or the learning, the things that are fueling and filling, refilling their cup. And then around month 4.5, like 5, is when they're actually taking all the actions. So they might start talking to people, just casually updating, maybe month 4, but to actually, like, send their resume out, to start applying for jobs. I have lots of clients. This is crazy, but I have a fair amount of clients that have gotten poached out of their breaks. So they don't even have a resume. It's just that because their network is strong and they've done great work before, while they're on a break, someone will reach out to them and say, "Hey, when you're thinking about being done with your break, please call me. I have something, I want to offer you, or I moved to a new company. I would love for you to come with me." And then for my other clients, it's a matter of, okay, like, now I have clarity on what I want to do, or at least the kind of jobs I want to have, and they start applying. And so for me, my process was 5 weeks to find a job. And like I said, it was like 5 offers, which was fantastic. But I also took 4 months of reentry because my break was 20 months long. And I also had, like, a longer processing period and sort of coming off of, just living my best life, doing whatever I wanted with complete freedom to travel. So there was, like, a reentry and process that had to happen to sort of decompress from that whole experience. But I also wanted to completely change my career. And so I wanted more time to explore, to have interest. For a lot of people, if changing a career or creating a new path forward is something you want to do, that's usually going to be one of your 4 themes. So it's not just the reentry period. It's like the reentry period is helping you create that momentum, but you're actually, like, working on it before that because it's one of your themes.
No, I think that that certainly makes perfect sense, and I think it's interesting that people start to get poached out of their break because they become more enticing, or they're otherwise or is in a good situation that they're not actively searching or having to find that position that puts them in a better place to when the time is right or the position's right to accept what makes sense and what might line up better with what they're wanting to do. So with all of that, maybe shifting gears just a little bit, one of the other things that we talked about, and I think it kind of goes along with the discussion, but does shift gears a little bit, is that the idea of, things don't have to be perfect in order to get started. In other words, there's always the desire that, hey, until, I want to make sure that things are just right, whether it's a business or my career or the position. And unless it's right, I just don't want to get started because then it won't be the perfect fit, and so that oftentimes will hold people back. So how do you balance the desire for having just that right perfect thing that you get into, or that business you get started, or the person you work for, versus just getting started? In other words, if I go, I'll give a scenario, and I know it's a compound question, what makes it all the
Okay.
worse, but I go and I take a break and I say, okay, 3 or 6 months, I finally took my break, I'm starting to look for new positions or start my own business, whichever it might be, and I have an opportunity, and it's not perfect, it's okay, but I'm fearful that now I'm going to get right back to where I was, where it's not perfect or it's not great. And so now I'm just taking something because I'm at the end of my break, and at some point I do have to pay my bills. And so how do you balance the, I want to find that perfect thing versus I want to, I need to pay my bills and need to re-engage in the working world?
Yeah. So, I mean, in that specific scenario, right, what I would say is getting really clear on your new purpose. So, you got clear on the purpose for taking a break, and great, you took a break. Now that you've come through that and you've had all of that restoration and learning and whatever your themes are, what is your new purpose? So, for me, my truth was, I want to get out of debt. I want to be debt free so that I have every opportunity available to me and I'm never taking jobs or careers in the future because of the amount of money I owe for past decisions. And
Hmm.
so once I was clear on that, right, settling becomes a different thing because whatever I take, I'm fulfilling that purpose. So it's not settling, right? But it might not be the dream job that I wanted. I did want to go into entrepreneurship at that point, but I decided like I wanted to pay off this 40, like $45,000 worth of MBA loans that I still had hanging over my head. So I ended up, finding a job, and there were 5 jobs. One of them paid a lot more than my last job. It was like a 30% raise with a promotion. But ultimately, I did this sort of like delicate balance of, I know I need to make at least as much as I made last time to pay off this debt as fast as I would like to pay it off. But I also really want to be happy in this job. So I took a job that it paid about the same as my previous job, right? So I said goodbye to that extra like 30K and took this other job. So I think it's once you're clear on your purpose, right? If you're making a decision that aligns to that purpose, it's not it's not really settling, but you need to know it might not look perfect because maybe you can't have A, B, C, and D all at the same time. You can build towards having those, but you've got to start with A, which is the most important thing, whatever, your purpose is. And I would say in general, when it comes to starting a business, I think I held myself back for a while thinking that if I had the perfect website and the perfect like niche and the perfect copy and the perfect name for my business and the perfect logo, like all these things that don't actually impact people, I could then launch my business. And so I held myself back from making money and putting myself out there because I was behind the scenes kind of hiding and trying to do it all perfectly. So I think as much as we can let go of, there's a perfect decision, and instead just be really clear on what our biggest priority or intention is in this next phase, and then just take action that helps us achieve that purpose, and have forgiveness for the fact that we can't know every possible scenario that's going to come at us, and we always have permission to change, right? We can always change direction if it doesn't work. I think we just can take action a lot sooner and then create more success.
No, I think that's definitely makes sense and is a great takeaway. Well, we could talk for a much longer extended time, and we only touched on a few of the topics that we'd had in hand. So we'll have to have you back on another time to one of our other our podcast episodes. But as we wrap up for today's episode, if we were to, I always like to wrap up with one question at the end of each episode. So we'll jump to that now. And the question for this podcast is, you know, within your industry, what is the biggest myth and why is it wrong?
Yeah. So I think the biggest myth within what I do and in my specific industry and niche is the idea that taking a break somehow sets you back, right? That it takes you off the path, that it reduces your success, that it could derail your career or it could set you back in your business. And that is absolutely wrong because we're humans, not machines. And we thrive, right, on being restored. We thrive on rest. We thrive on play. These are things that fill our cup. These are things that inspire us, that continue to create more innovation, more ideas. We bring our spark back to life when we stop to recover for a second. And we don't always need to be rushing, 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 and doing to be productive and worthy. There's so much productivity that happens on the inside where it's not immediately visible, but it's incredibly impactful. And so I would say stopping to take a break, whether it's 2 days, a week, 3 months, right, can be immensely helpful to helping you zoom forward in your life to create the things that you want to create instead of derailing that success.
Mm. No, I think that's definitely it makes sense, and it's a good myth to dispel. So, with that, as we're wrapping up the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. A next best friend. I do. I have an open spot for a next best friend. They can reach me at K McGhee Coaching on Instagram. I'm on Instagram a lot. I respond to DMs there. And then I also have a website, which is kmcgeecoaching.com. So you can connect with me there. You can find out more about me, my story, anything you want. But definitely if you want to connect and have a conversation, hit me up on Instagram.
All right. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out, connect, and support a great business and figure out how you can take a break or if or when that need arises. So, with that, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been it's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners, if you can help us to share this expertise with all the other startups and small businesses out there by leaving a review, sharing, and clicking subscribe. Helps us to make sure that everybody can find out about all these great expertise. And on that note, if you ever need help with patents, trademarks, or anything else with your startup or your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we are always here to help. Well, thank you again, Katrina, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thank you.